Hello, and welcome to the Embarcadero University course, Data Modeling with ER Studio. In this session, we'll talk about how to compare and merge models. We'll provide an overview of the compare and merge wizard. We'll show you how to use submodels to define the scope of comparisons. We'll go through logical to physical merging. We'll go through cross-DM1 comparisons and show you how you can compare a logical model to another logical model that might reside in another DM1 file. And we'll do the same for physical to physical comparisons where the models might be in different physical models. Then lastly, we'll show you how to compare the physical model to the database. Okay, let's start this session on comparing and merging models by providing an overview of the compare and merge wizard. If I go over to the data model tree on the left, I can right-click on a logical and select compare and merge. And this is where we'll be able to compare this particular model to another model in this DM1, meaning one of the two physical models. We can compare to another DM1, and that would be a logical or a physical in there. And we'll see actually any open models that we have here in the drop-down list. We could also compare to the repository, and this would make me log in and browse to the repository to grab a diagram. And if I was in a physical model, I could compare to a SQL file or the live database, and we'll get to those as we move along in this session. So if I select this first option here, note by right-clicking on the logical and selecting compare and merge that I basically chose that to be the current model, or basically the model that will be on the left side. And now if I hit next, I'll have to hit select the target model. In this case, I'll select this main model here. Then we'll hit next and we'll go into the options. And what we have here is the ability to pick and choose which properties we want to select to either compare or not compare. And note that we have just about everything selected here, except for some of the physical objects down below. Now, we could get very selective here and compare just logical names, just definitions, just the indexes. But, if we don't know what we've changed, it's a good idea to select everything here, and it would do a full comparison. But note, if you wanted to compare certain types of properties across models, you can do that. Under the general options, what we can do here is we have some options that would ignore case. If we're comparing, when we're comparing names, we could ignore binding differences for default, merge only selected objects. If we knew that we changed just a couple objects in the logical model and selected them before we launched the merge, we could check this and it would actually match those up against the same objects on the target side. And then for new tables and columns, we could also exclude any text here like attachments, notes, or definitions. And this would be the use case here is if we had different definition text between the logical and the physical model. Now we'll be presented with a list of the objects that we have on each side. And you can see here the logical is on the left, the physical is on the right. And these names happen to match each other. If they don't, we can actually take a look at the logical names, and we actually store both the logical names and the physical names in both the logical and the physical models. We just display the physical names in the physical and the logical by default. And you can change that through display settings as we looked at in another session. But it may be helpful to match up logical to logical if you're looking at logical versus physical and they don't match very well at all. We'd see under views if we want to compare any of those, users, roles, shapes, and those were unselected in the options, so that's why they're blank here. So if I hit next here, we'll basically see anywhere, and this will give us the results for the side-by-side comparison. So again, the physical model is on the right, the logical model is on the left. And if we drill into something like department, we'll see here that there's a difference in the definition. And I can hit this SQL difference, which really is a text difference. If we're selecting large text objects like definitions or DDL or SQL code, I can hit this, and this would actually show me basically what has changed here. And we can see here that this more text definition is actually different, this particular line here. And this would go line by line and show us the differences. What we can also do if we expand the employee node here is we'll see that we have a new attribute that was added in the logical model. And we can see that it does not exist on the physical side. If we expand marital status, you'll see because we added a new attribute in the middle of a table that the sequence differences don't match here. And you can see here for gender, for hire date, so on, that's the main differences here. We could see under employee reviews that this is actually a new entity that was added in the logical model. We want to attempt to add it in the physical. And then you can see under product photo any other differences between the attributes and the columns. And there's some, looks like some data type length issues here. So now what we want to do, and let me expand this a little bit, is actually decide how we want to resolve these differences. So if I wanted to just merge this department change here, I can select merge to target, and it would only update that particular change. What I can also do is select employee, merge to target. You can notice all the attributes underneath would be merged as well. So you can selectively choose what you want to merge back and forth. If we wanted to remove this new attribute, I can just flip this around and merge to current, would actually delete that model, or that attribute, excuse me, from the left side, the logical model, and then reset all the sequence orders. If we wanted to globally set, I can go down to set all resolutions, and we can set everything to merge to target. Then we have some filters here as well that are going to show us basically if we've set different resolutions, if we want to review that before we commit the change. And lastly, what we can do if we hit this report button is it will output a report of the differences we're reviewing here. So we wanted to take this offline, go review it with a colleague, we could do that, or we could actually just archive it and show that these were the differences on a given date. You have some different options here to preserve the current tree expansion if you wanted to, and then the format of that report, HTML versus RTF. So I'm going to merge everything to target here, and then we'll hit finish. So basically that's that, and what we've done is just merge logical to physical. Okay, we've done a overview of the compare and merge. Now let's talk about ways that you can optimize the compare and merge. Now, if we were going to do that comparison again, and we knew that we made changes to only the human resources model and wanted to compare just on that human resources model, or even conversely, if we knew we had a bunch of changes done across the entire data model, what we can, and we didn't want to see all of them at once, we just wanted to break them down by subject area, I can actually just right click on a particular subject area or submodel, do the compare merge, And when I select the target model, I can select just that submodel. We could select another submodel if we wanted to as well, but what this is going to do is when I walk through the wizard, it's going to show me just the objects that are involved between these two submodels. And you'll notice that in the prior comparison, we're actually just redoing the comparison we did again. We didn't see those other changes that we've done. So maybe that's what we wanted. Maybe we just right now wanted to synchronize the human resources submodels between the logical and the physical. Well, if you leverage submodels, it will allow you to do that. Okay, now that we've gone through a overview of the compare wizard, showed you how to do a logical to physical comparison, and showed you how to use submodels to narrow down the scope of the comparison, let's focus on a cross DM1 comparison. And whenever you're doing a cross DM1 comparison, so that would mean comparing the logical model in this AdventureWorks v2 to this original AdventureWorks DM1, and that would be the same for going from logical to logical, or logical to physical across DM1s, or physical to physical across DM1s. But anytime you do that, it's always a good idea to have both models open. And the reasoning for that is that if they're both open and you've merged changes either both ways, one way, the wizard will prompt you to commit the changes to the target model if it's not open. If it is open, you'll actually be able to review the target model and take a look at it, make sure you've set all the resolutions correctly before you actually save and commit those changes to that DM1. So again, it's always a good idea to have both open. So in this case, let's right click, we'll go to the compare merge, and we'll choose this second option here, and I'll choose this AdventureWorks target model, and then in this case we'll do logical to logical. We'll keep the options the same. We'll keep all the objects selected, and then we'll see the differences here. And we can review them just like we did before. We'll see that this employee reviews that was added in V2 is not in V1. We'll see that a new attribute in the employee table is not in that employee table in V1. And then we'll see the definition change. So you can see that the process is very similar as you're going from across DM1s rather than logical to physical in the same DM1. We've tried to keep the process very similar so that you're very familiar with it. Okay, so up until this point, we've compared logical to physical and done a cross DM1 comparison. Now let's actually take a look at the model to database comparison. And for this, we need to go to the physical model. So I'll right click on AdventureWorks, and then I'll select Compare and Merge. And now that we've launched it from a physical model, we have the option to compare against the live database or against a SQL file. In this case, I'll go against the live database. We'll hit Next. In this step, we have to choose the database platform, and you can see it's defaulted to SQL Server because that's the database platform that the physical model is. And we'd be able to put in our login information. In this next step, you have to want to make sure that you select the owners that you want to compare to. So I'll select the same ones that we reverse engineered. Then I'll hit Next. We'll choose the options here. And then we can choose, just like with a normal comparison, we can choose the particular entities or tables that we want to compare between the physical model and the database. We'll hit Next, and this will actually go get the latest schema or schemas from the database and then show me the differences. You can see here that there's quite a bit, and we can expand here. There's some column data type differences here. There are some, if we expand this a little bit, there are some text image file group differences here. But say we want to go through and we just notice that this encrypted national ID number is not in the database. And that's the most pressing need that we have here. So what I can do is just simply select that one entity. We'll select merge to target and then hit next. And what this will do is just push that change to the database. And we're not going to update the live database. What we'll do here is you'll see that we have a SQL file that will be generated. And then we have some options here for rebuilding any dependent objects. If I hit finish, it'll ask me if I want to override it. I'll say yes. And then it'll ask me if I want to execute it right now, and I can also hit yes. And you'll see here that this will actually load it up into a universal iSQL 2.0 window. If you use some of our other SQL execution utilities like DBArtisan or RapidSQL, you can also configure ERStudio to use that. In this case, you'll notice that we have just the alter table that will add that encrypted national ID number attribute, or column, to the database. So that concludes the session on comparing and merging models. We've gone through a logical to physical comparison, across DM1, a logical to logical comparison, and a database comparison.